once again for a new episode of It's Cuppa Time. And today I want to answer a bunch of questions that have come through on various videos I've put up and do a little playing, do a little demonstrating. So let's get right to it. From Specialty, I've got 3 different questions that I'll cover. And then a question from Jamie White. So let's start with the first one from Specialty. The cheapest gong stand with wheels will be a garment rack from Marketplace or the local buy and sell. Yeah, I mean, you can get all kinds of secondhand clothing racks at, some sort of a used fixture store, or if a store is going out of business, often you can buy their fixtures. You can go in and buy their clothing racks, or you can find them in other places. You can buy clothing racks at IKEA, just like I'm putting up on the screen now. This one doesn't have wheels, but you could, I'm sure, attach wheels to it. Clothing racks are great. I've used them before, especially in the early days before any of this Gibraltar sort of stuff was available. I did have various clothing racks and other sort of racks that I was using and repurposed them to hold gongs and bells and other things. So it's a trade-off, I think. One thing is a lot of the clothing racks, especially things that you'll buy for home use, are sort of flimsy. They're not the sturdiest, and you would have to be careful putting them up high and putting a heavy gong on it because the base is usually not that wide. So it could tend to tip, or even not, it might tend to wobble because they're not meant to hold gongs that are being played. They're meant to hold clothes that are just going to sit there. Now with the commercial ones, something that you would find in a clothing store, those are generally heavier duty, and they usually will have nice casters on the bottom because stores like to rearrange everything, now and then, and it's so much easier just to push a rack over here and a rack over there. So those can be really great and adapted for gongs, either drilling some hooks in or using the Nexus method of wrapping the cord over the bar with a hook. Great, yeah, especially you can pick up some good deals. Now the trade-off from those is they're not very portable. I would say something like a clothing rack is great for a permanent installation, someplace you are going to leave it. If you do a lot of touring like I do, most of those clothing racks don't come apart easily and go back together. It's kind of a pain. And then over the long haul, they're not meant to be put together, taken apart, put together, taken apart over and over. The parts can become bent, become misaligned, things like that. So for like a permanent installation, I think something like that is great. Now I have an example right behind me. Something really heavy duty. This is a library book stand. As you can see here, we've got all these little notches in here for hooking shelves in. And this is on wheels, which is great. This thing, is solid. I could hang on it and it's not going to fall apart. The wheels are wide enough, but this will hold up to a 32-inch gong. It works well. I got this from my son, who is a librarian archivist. He got this given to him, and he's like, it was being thrown out or such, and he was like, Dad, you want to make a gong stand out of this? And I said, sure. So I went to the hardware store, got some S hooks, and in some wing screws and some other ones, and then I just drilled some holes through this, which was not easy, as this is like really solid industrial steel. I went through a couple drill bits trying to just drill 2 holes. But I put it together and I've got this great portable gong stand. So yeah, you can do that. Yeah, I can just roll it right out of the way. Get it out of here. And bang into other things in my studio. Okay, so that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, you can repurpose all kinds of things. I remember in my younger days, I took a stand for a big box fan that you could raise it up, you know, probably about 5 feet high. And I hung all kinds of stuff on that. Small gongs, thunder sheet, bells, whatever. I was using that. And, you know, clothing racks and other things. So, yeah, they're great. But again, I think these type of fixtures, like my library stand, that thing is bolted together. To take it apart would take, you know, an hour, and then to put it back together. So it's more of a permanent thing, and that's fine if you have a studio space, or you're working at a studio space where you're keeping things. That kind of thing can work well, or at home in your spare bedroom or your studio or whatever, just like I have here. They're great. But if you are traveling a lot, I think you really need something that's going to be designed to be put together, taken apart, put together, taken apart over and over. And that will stand up to the rigors of playing. I mean, I average probably 50 sessions a year. Before the pandemic, I was doing like 80 sessions a year in concerts and that. Slowed down a little bit since everything's come back together. But, you know, I need things that are going to be dependable and easy to carry, and will break down and be small. Okay, great question. So let's get the second part here from Jamie White. It's kind of related. And she says, I recently bought a folding camping table from Academy Sports for under $40. It folds out to 2 foot by 4 foot by 27 inches tall. It only weighs 12 pounds. And I put that rubber shelf liner on it, like I've shown before. And she could put her bowls and all her, you know, little percussion and stuff, maybe mallets on it. Things like that. Often you can find different sort of folding tables, and you can get them at a real bargain. Let's face it, if you buy commercial stuff designed, you know, for percussion use, it tends to be expensive. A good case in point is SKB cases. They make a stand case on wheels, which is the exact same case as their golf club case for flying a set of golf clubs on an airplane. Yet, if you buy the stand case at a music store, it is going to cost you more than going to a sporting goods store and buying the exact same case for golf clubs. That's the way the market goes, I guess. But yeah, I mean, go out there and find things and repurpose them. I do that all the time. I've been doing that for 50 years, repurposing all kinds of gear for percussion. And that's kind of the fun of it, is you can do that. And find what works for you. Okay? I know what works for me. Find what works for you. Okay. Let us get to Specialty's second question. And this is a really interesting one. Can you tell your opinion on how gongs affect each other at the molecular level? I'm noticing a strong influence between my Jupiter and Platonic year gongs and wonder what's going on. That's really a great question. Now, my gongs do react to each other, some of them more so than others. Like the 32 Symphonic and the number 2 Bronze have a real nice relationship. The sound creation number 4 water gong and the 32-inch, they work so beautifully together and are so harmonious, and that is why these are 2 of the first gongs I got when I became a Paiste endorser. The number 6 bronze gong and the 32-inch symphonic have a really nice relationship too. Now, as far as being molecular, I really don't think it has anything to do with the molecular structure of the metal itself. It's not like, well, the molecules in this piece of metal are reacting to the molecules in this piece of metal. No, but it does work. I'm not a physicist or a scientist, but my understanding would be it does work on a molecular level. But it's the idea of the sound waves coming off the gong, moving through the air, creating sound. And what is sound? Sound is the air molecules moving and eventually pressing against our eardrum and making that move. That's why in a vacuum, there is no sound, because you need some sort of medium to move to create what we know as sound. That's why underwater, things sound different, because water is a different medium than air. So what's really happening is the sound waves are coming off the gongs, moving the air molecules, and if you got 2 gongs, these sound waves can come together and they can react with each other in various ways. They can be in and out of phase. They can cause different sort of effects. One, they can be very harmonious, just like if you're playing a nice chord on a piano. Or they can be a little dissonant. And oftentimes if you have 2 gongs that are fairly close in tuning, you will get that beat pattern where you play them and they go wah, 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 that sort of thing. Again, that's due to the molecules of the air and the actual sound waves interacting with each other. It really doesn't have anything to do with the metal itself. So let me demonstrate that. I've got some of my favorite matchups, as I was telling you here. We'll see if I can get them activated and get some, if you can hear it over the mics up here. Okay. So these 2 work out real well, and they get a nice slight beat pattern if I get them going here. Other than that, they just sound really nice together. I think these are very harmonious, and I like to play these 2 together. And I think one of the problems is sometimes we hear these reactions, beat patterns, and other sort of things going on between the different notes and the different gongs. And we're up here, we can hear much more subtle things. Yet the person way out here, they might not be picking up on that sort of thing. Some combinations will be really strong and will definitely be a definite beat, and you might play the 2 gongs and they're going wah, 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 and you can really hear that and feel it, and even at a distance. Let's try the 32-inch and the number 6. Those have kind of an interesting relationship. Can you hear that? It's a little dissonant, and there's a very fast wah, 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 sort of pulse. And again, that has nothing to do with the molecules of the metal. It has everything to do with the molecules of the air acting as a medium for the vibrations, for the sound. You can hear that fast. Now let me just play the symphonic alone. Now I'll add the other one. And suddenly I can really hear and feel this pulse off of the symphonic that's not there when I play it alone. Over the years, my favorite combination has been the number 4 Balter Gong and my 32-inch symphonic. They just have a really nice tonal relationship that is so harmonious. There's no real beat pattern, but it's just that they blend so well together. Just the center tone of each. I'll play them one at a time so you can hear them alone, then I'll play them together, and just notice how they've really come together. It's almost like a chord. They blend so well. It's one of my favorite combinations. So here's the 32-inch symphonic. It's got a really nice kind of throaty, deep center resonance. Here's the center of the water gong. A little higher, very pure, just very pure tone. It's almost bell-like. So let's play them together. And again, notice how they blend. Now it's 2 notes and some overtones, but if you listen to it, the 2 combined create more tones. Like I said, it sounds very chordal to me. It sounds much more than just the 2 main tones. So I hope that answers the question about molecules and combining gongs. So this is one thing to do when you're buying gongs. If you can play them in person, especially if you can audition them with, one of your own gongs. If you can find a place and say, hey, can I bring my main gong because I want to find something that works with it? Okay. You could you can find something that's going to be harmonious, like these 2. 2, you can find something that's going to be dissonant, maybe kind of a dissonant chordal effect. Or 3, something that they're very close in tuning and you're going to get beat patterns. These are things to look for, when building up a set. Is often you will get those reactions. And you might like one, you might not like another. So that's, it's really personal preference. Do you like this? It's very dark. It's very dissonant. And it's very powerful, I think. And I like dark sounds. So this appeals to me. And then add this one in. If you can hear that, I've got this big pulse going with all the gongs sort of reacting to each other. Okay. Let's play something with this setup, and then we'll get on to our final question. get to the final question here. Again from Special T. So you're getting a bargain here. You're getting all kinds of questions answered. I'm thinking about miking live performance. What say you? Wow, there's a lot there to think about. My personal preference is to not mic my instruments, if at all possible. That's why I prefer playing smaller venues, yoga studios, smaller halls, smaller concert halls, churches, places with good acoustics that are designed for acoustic music. I prefer that because what I want is I want people to hear the sounds of the gongs. I'm not talking about the molecules. I want them to hear the actual molecules of the air being stimulated by the movement of the gong coming directly to their ear and their body. So they are hearing and feeling the direct sound from my instruments, whether it's a bell, a bowl, a shaker, a gong. Now the minute you throw some mics up and put up some speakers, you change that whole equation. And then people, they're still hearing the live sound, but depending on the setup and how loud you turn it up, they are then hearing secondhand sound. So they are hearing the gongs moving the air, hitting a microphone diaphragm, which moves, sending an electrical signal into a mixer and an amp, sending that out of another wire into a speaker, where a speaker cone vibrates and moves the air molecules. So they are hearing secondhand sound. To me, it's not the same as first-hand sound. And that's just a personal preference. So I prefer to play in venues where I do not have to use mics. Now, that's not always possible. Sometimes I might play in a very large venue or some sort of a club. I mean, I've opened for rock bands before in a rock club, so it was a whole different type of situation there. Or often if you're playing outdoors, I've played some very big festivals, outdoors. Definitely the sound isn't going to carry. We had to use mics. I've done some big workshops in some really big rooms, and we used the mics on the gongs because we had to get the sound across. It's obvious that the acoustic sound wasn't going to do it. So, yeah, I'll go both ways, but I prefer to be just acoustic, if at all possible. Now, if I use mics, I like to use as few mics as possible. Generally, maybe a stereo pair overhead, just like I've got here. Just a nice overhead pair to pick up the sound and amplify it just enough that it can carry more. I don't want it cranked way up on the board and being super loud, but I want it to be okay, the people in the back, so they can hear it. That's my take on that. The real tough thing in that, there's two ways to do it. One, you can carry your own sound system, your own mics and your own mixer, and do your own sound. That's very difficult to a certain extent because you are here and you are not out there hearing what the resultant sound coming through the loudspeakers is. You can have somebody play your gongs while you go out and listen and adjust the volume and maybe the EQ and things like that. A sound check. But there are a couple problems with that is they don't play the gongs the way that you do. And sound checks, from my experience, are rarely like playing live because you're playing to an empty hall. The minute you get a lot of people in there, especially it's winter time here, they all have jackets, hats and gloves, scarves, all kinds of stuff like that. That soaks up a lot of sound whether they're wearing it or they put their coat on a chair or whatever, and just bodies in there. Totally changes the acoustics. So suddenly what you would adjust the sound for at sound check and say, oh, that's loud enough, that's perfect. You fill a place with people, it totally changes it. And you're up here playing and you cannot be out there listening to what's going on and what the change is. Now the other part of that is if you have a sound person running the sound for you. Ideally, it would be somebody you could trust and somebody who knows what you do, has seen you play before, and has hopefully run sound for you before. Just like a rock band, they always bring their own sound person on tour because that person knows what the band is supposed to sound like. You don't just go to different venues when you're a big band and just, hey, yeah, oh, fine, yeah, you can run the sound. No, you can't do that because it's so critical. You bring your own person in. And that's why big bands bring their own rig. They have their own stage, their own sound, their own lights, their own everything. But most of us aren't big rock bands and we can't afford to bring a sound person with us on tour. So if you're playing a venue, a club, or someplace where they do have a sound system and somebody running it, you are basically at their mercy. And you got to hope that they know what they're doing, especially in the case of these instruments. I've been in that situation, and the person running the soundboard is used to mixing rock bands, which is such a totally complete different thing. I think of what I do more as like an acoustic folk group, guitars, or some sort of a small classical chamber ensemble, like maybe a string quartet or something. And again, you don't want to amplify stuff and put all kinds of effects on it and pump up the EQ and get the bass going and all that. No, that's not the idea. It's not a rock show. But too many people who are used to just mixing rock bands have no clue when presented with something like this how to mix it. So your best bet is don't piss off the sound man. Try to make friends with them at the venue. Try to explain what you do and how you've worked with it in the past. And if you've developed some sort of miking system that works for you, saying, this is what works. Let's try this. Like for me, I just go, can we get a pair of overheads? And if I have my table in front with the bowls and stuff, I might say, okay, can we get maybe 1 or 2 mics on the table and a pair of overheads? That should cover everything. In special circumstances, maybe some spot mics, maybe behind the gongs, to get a little closer sound on either 1 or 2 gongs that are main gongs or something like that. But the less mics, the less problems you're going to have, especially with a sound person who might not know what they're doing. If they've got 8 mics, that's 8 chances of them to screw things up for you. If they have 2 mics in stereo, really all they have to do is just ride that fader up and down. Find where it's comfortable, leave it alone. I tell people, I control my volume. Again, it's not a rock concert where people are up on stage, the amps are like on 10, the drummer's just flailing away, and the sound person is riding all the faders and controlling how loud people are. It's more like a classical music group where they're controlling their volume. I'm controlling my volume. I can play at a whisper. Now when I'm playing quiet like that, I don't want it cranked up because the sound guy is like, I can't hear that. I'm going to turn it up. The idea is I don't want you to hear it that much. It's quiet. And then when I hit a big gong or something or come to a crescendo, from when I'm playing quiet and suddenly I play loud. I mean, you're just gonna have trouble. Distortion, you know, it's gonna go into red, and that meter's just gonna get pinned. So I try to explain to them, this is an acoustic setup. It's like a string quartet. It's like a folk group with just guitars, or it's like a traditional country group with a banjo, a guitar, and a fiddle. Boom. That's how I want you to approach it. This is not Van Halen or Rush or something like that. No. Approach it. It's acoustic instruments. All we want to do is just bring the volume up. I don't want any stuff done to it. I played one place, I can't remember where it was, but this is like 17, 18 years ago. I was touring around, and this guy was kind of an old rock guy mixing bands forever, and you know, he was probably stoned. I was like, yeah, I put flange on there, and I had the echo going, and I was panning your gongs back and forth and all this, and I'm just like, oh, man, you know, you've ruined my performance. That's not what I wanted. You know, he started playing around with it and thinking I was Pink Floyd or something and was going to make this big show. I was like, don't do that. So if you can explain things to the house sound person, engineer, whatever they want to call themselves, of what you are doing, minimal mics, just to bring the volume up to reinforce it. This is sound reinforcement. That's all we want. We want to bring the volume up so that people can hear it better. Then that's good. Okay, that's my take on miking your gongs and everything. And it helps too if you learn about mics and acoustics and recording and sound reinforcement and all that. I've played in bands since I was 15, so that's like way over 50 years now. So, I mean, I've got a lot of experience. I always paid attention to sound people. Whether it was live or in a recording studio, I always paid attention to what the engineers were doing, how they set mics up, how they set levels, how they tested things, what they were doing. I paid attention so that I would understand it, so I could better control what's going on in a situation. I could tell them, here's what I've done in the past. Bang. Stereo overheads, put them in ORTF or an XY figure. That's fine. Bring the volume up. You probably won't need any EQ unless there's a bad frequency. That's where we are. Okay. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of the answers to these questions. We'll see you next time.